All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this spooky episode number 4 of the Millennials Are Old Podcast, where two extremely old millennials review movies that we're both interested in. Uh, and this
What a concept.
exactly a concept that no one has ever thought of before. Millennials doing podcasts about movies.
Guys talking about movies.
Exactly. And on this special episode, we're going to be reviewing the movie Hubie Halloween, which was Brian's pick for this episode. So, Brian, tell us a little bit about your history with Adam Sandler and why you chose this movie.
So I'm actually a really big Sandler apologist. I think he's really talented and likable. I think even like his maligned movies, when taken on their own merits, are pretty entertaining. Like I think Jack and Jill is actually like a pretty funny dumb comedy, for instance. But even when his movies are bad, I just like him. I think he's got a really kind of like a good energy about him, and he is funny to watch, even when his writing is off. And I wanted to pick this movie because if there's a through line in the films I've selected for this series, it's movies that I've given kind of a lot of thought to that I don't think most people think much about in any sort of way. Um, and this movie occupies this space where it was a few months into COVID, and people who generally probably wouldn't like a movie like this were kind of more receptive to it. I think because life was just so bleak at the time. And also, I just wanted to pick, I realized we were in October and I wanted to do Halloween stuff. So it's kind of off the cuff, but I don't know. I figured that this was a movie that I don't know if anyone, except for, Sandler podcasts, has talked about much.
Yeah, I've actually tried to look up a couple videos on YouTube about it today, and reviews were not particularly common. And as we'll get into with the critical reception, were rather mixed.
Yeah.
Some of them were very negative, some of them were positive. Very few were in between. I'll just say that.
And even a lot of the positive reviews I remember by like serious critics were kind of like giving it a pass because they were like, it's like an effort movie and it's a nice movie. You could kind of still looking down on it, I think, which I don't agree with. I like Sandler a lot, and I think that he clearly put a lot of like energy in this movie more than in, say, Grown Ups. But that's what I remember about the good reviews for this when it came out, was that people just wanted to be nice about it.
Yeah, and also I will say too, before we get into too much of my thoughts on Adam Sandler, so my quick Adam Sandler history, I've probably seen maybe about a quarter of his movies. Billy Madison, Happy Gilmore, Little Nicky, Mr. Deeds, freaking Click, this movie, Uncut Gems, Waterboy, yep, totally forgot about Waterboy. So yeah, I've probably seen roughly, I would say, about a quarter to a third of his movies. And the one thing I'll say about Adam Sandler is he seems to be very self-aware of his legacy and his reception, and he also seemed to have a good sense of humor about himself, which is something that I think a lot of critics, especially during like the Jack and Jill days, I would say probably the nadir of Adam Sandler's critical reception,
Yeah.
really never gave him credit for. Like Adam Sandler is an incredibly talented and intelligent artistic mind, I would say.
Well, and like obviously very business minded, but I don't really think that much of what he does comes off as insincere. Like he's always knows what he is, and I think his production company is what it is, and he is genuine about that, even when the movies are, the dumbest movies imaginable.
Yes, exactly. No, for sure, absolutely. So without further ado, let's get into some details of this Halloween classic on this spooky month of October. This movie came out in 2018 exclusively, 2020 exclusively through Netflix. It was rated PG-13, the very first PG-13 movie we reviewed for this show. This movie was directed by Steve Brill, probably most well known for his Cream. I don't know much about Brill Cream, but I've been told it is a cream.
Well, he's the heir to the Brill fortune, and that's how he got his director job.
Absolutely. Just just like Armie Hammer, the actor who was like Me Too'd for like literally wanting to eat women.
Oh, that guy. Oh my, yeah.
You know, his like great grandfather was like a multi-billionaire
Of
who
course.
created,
I mean,
I think created Arm and Hammer, if I'm not mistaken.
think about how rich you have to have been your whole life to want to eat people.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. Yes. There's always that very famous photo. At least I think should be more famous than it probably is, but that one of Jeff Bezos eating the lizard. And like you, oh God, that's honestly like one of the most harrowing pictures of all time.
You can
like,
see the delight in his eyes as he destroys this kind of beautiful creature.
Yeah, he's probably thinking like, oh man, I had some Sumatran boys recently, but this is a real delicacy.
My God.
But yeah, just spooky shit. But anyways, speaking of more spooky things, this movie was written by Adam Sandler and Tim Herlihy. And I looked up Tim Herlihy on Wikipedia, and he's mostly known for working on other Happy Madison productions.
Yeah, and I wanted to Herlihy's been Sandler's writing partner pretty much his whole career. It's a pretty, I don't know, effective partnership because when Sandler came to SNL, he really wasn't a writer. He had done a lot of improv and he had done some stand-up, even though people don't really think of him as a stand-up. That is what he started doing. And he had all these funny bits when he came to SNL, and he had these funny characters and this sort of energy, but he wasn't able to like concentrate those into writing sketches. But Herlihy was really good at writing for that and kind of framing those things. And so when Sandler moved on to movies, Herlihy came with him. I think he's had a writing credit on nearly every Happy Madison movie, probably every Sandler one.
Oh, okay. So you know, it's always good to have a frequent collaborator, especially one who kind of knows your craft. So hats off to Tim Herlihy. If we ever meet in real life, I will tell you that you have made some of my favorite movies from my childhood, or at least were part of that, for sure. This movie was produced by a bunch of people, including frequent Sandler collaborator Alan Covert and somebody named Chris Kardashian, but I don't think it's that Chris Kardashian. Because I looked them up, and no relation to Kris Jenner, otherwise known previously
really?
Chris Kardashian. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but there was nothing I could find that Kris Jenner was involved with this movie, but I thought that was very funny. Because he was even spelled the same Kardashian and Chris. So I was like, wait, Kim Kardashian's mom made this movie? Like, what the fuck? Like, but no.
That would be awesome.
That'd be hilarious. But yeah, no connection as far as I'm aware of.
I kind of suspect that Covert probably was given a producer's credit as a kind of gimme by Sandler.
That wouldn't surprise me. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
I just can't see that guy taking on a production like leadership role. I just can't see it.
No, for sure. The movie is about 102 minutes long with about 15 minutes of credits and bloopers. So realistically, the movie's about 90 minutes. I wasn't able to find a budget or box office, but your box office, it's released through Netflix. You know, wasn't released theatrically. Do the math there. And I assume, considering this movie didn't have a budget, but it is a Happy Madison production, so I assume the budget was at least $130 million.
And probably, 2/3 of that goes to actors in that, because it's definitely a low budget movie.
I think 25% of that budget went to Tim Meadows specifically. But I could be wrong.
He needs it.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, I was gonna say, Tim Meadows hasn't been in a whole lot recently. I think those walk hard paychecks dried up a long time ago, but
but he's still making his Ladies Man residuals.
Yeah, it was Ladies Man. That's it, Ladies Man. That was the movie I was thinking of, because I was thinking, like, wasn't he in another movie where he was like a talk show host or like a radio guy or
his
whatever?
His lone starring vehicle.
Yeah, just wild, because I actually like Tim Meadows quite a bit. I think he's got a good presence.
Yeah, me too.
Screen. Yeah, for sure. On Rotten Tomatoes, this movie has a 51% critic score and a 43% audience score. So once again, very middle of the road reviews, but considering movies like Jack and Jill have had a notorious, I think, 1% on Rotten Tomatoes, I think 51% is definitely a market improvement over, like, as I believe I said on a previous edition of this episode that was unrecorded by me. the nadir of Adam Sandler's critical reception was in like the like the very early 2010s, late 2000s. So,
And of course, when he did his big stand-up special for Netflix, he called it 100% fresh
yeah.
in reference to his, poor relationship with film critics, I suppose.
Exactly. All right. And without further ado, let's get into some Hubie Halloween trivia. So there actually was quite a few pieces of trivia, so I tried to trim it down a little bit. Quite a lot of references in this movie that I'm sure Brian will get to in the synopsis, but I wanted to keep the trivia just a little short here. Hubie has a poster of Burt Reynolds from Smokey and the Bandit in his room as tribute to the late actor who starred alongside him in the 2005 film The Longest Yard. Which I actually have seen The Longest Yard, now that
I have not.
Really? That's
somehow, yeah.
I believe that was, I think that was the original. Oh, yeah, the original was Burt Reynolds in there, and he was
as
in the
remake. Younger guy, right?
Yeah.
As the character that Sandler plays in the remake.
And I do believe in the remake, Burt Reynolds was noted for not having a very good time on the remake, if I'm not mistaken. I think he hated being on that production, but who knows? Burt Reynolds, not very well known for being a easy to get along with actor in the first place. But
yeah, that must have been. I'm going to assume that that's him because, by all accounts, Happy Madison productions are amazingly, amicable for people on it. So I don't know. I'm gonna say I think Burt Reynolds is a dick.
Yeah, I mean, most famously, he has his gaggle of former SNL actors and Kevin James in his movies because he likes to have vacations with his friends and they all get paid millions of dollars.
And people talk shit about that, but I don't know. If I had a production company in Sandler's money, I would absolutely give all of my second banana friends cushy jobs.
Oh no, for sure, absolutely. And before we get into some of the cameos in this movie, the one I was surprised who wasn't in this movie, I was surprised David Spade wasn't in this movie. That was the only one I didn't see. But I think to be fair, actually, didn't David Spade kind of have a public falling out with Adam Sandler?
Did he?
I think David Spade has been kind of having a rough time recently, so I think maybe there was some personal reasons he wasn't in this. But
David Spade is a very bitter seeming man from biographies I read about SNL and things.
For sure, no question about that.
Seems like he basically is that smarmy, put upon guy that he plays in Tommy Boy, and when he did the Hollywood Minute, where he's just mean.
Yeah, no, exactly. I totally agree with that. Now, I might be speculating, but I swear I heard something that there's either some personal issues or he had a public falling out with Sandler. I don't know, though. Do not quote me on that. But that was the only reason I can imagine. That was the only reason I can imagine he was not in this movie, because I highly doubt he had any sort of work conflicts that would get in the way of filming this. Because I will say David Spade is definitely not my favorite of the Happy Madison crew by quite a bit.
No, and it's always kind of been strange to me. A lot of people our age will go to bat for Joe Dirt, which is not a good movie. That's one of the worst Happy Madison.
It's not a good movie, but it's nostalgic for me. I'll just say that. I will, I said, it's not a good movie, but I do enjoy it. But yeah, no. Also, I will say Rob Schneider being this. If Rob Schneider could be in this movie, come on, David Spade, you should have been in this movie. Really.
Yeah, so I have to assume if they had a falling out, it wasn't because David Spade said some shitty stuff, because of course Schneider's still around.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, talk about people that should be canceled soon. But all right, next little fun fact I have. This is the 5th Adam Sandler film where his love interest has the initials VV.
This was such a good bit. That made me so happy when this first came out. I was watching it.
The other films are Billy Madison, Veronica Vaughn, Happy Gilmore, Virginia Bennett, The Waterboy, Vicky Valancourt, and Little Nicky, Valerie Varan. I think that's very interesting. I think he's doing the double V because it looks like a W, because Adam Sandler was a noted Bush fanboy, but I could be wrong about that. I don't know. But yeah, I do think that's very interesting. I don't know what the motif of the double V is.
I think it's just a cute Easter egg thing. And of course, alliterative names are easiest to remember. That's why you see them a lot in comic books.
Very true. Very true. Next little fact that I have: the mayor's garish jacket is supposed to rip on the mayor's jacket in the movie Jaws. And both mayors refused to cut off festivities despite potential harm, which I did notice. And also, another thing, this movie takes place in Salem, Massachusetts, and they have a black mayor. I doubt Salem, Massachusetts would ever elect a black mayor, or there's enough black people in Salem to elect that person mayor in the first place. But I could be
takes
wrong
place
about that.
in an alternate reality that's a post-racial,
Post-racial
possible society that Sandler has envisioned.
Exactly. That is actually very true. That is very true. This is the third collaboration between Adam Sandler and Ben Stiller.
Yes.
They previously starred together in Happy Gilmore and the Meyerowitz stories. And another little thing here, Ben Stiller has the first role in this movie as reprising his character of Hal from Happy Gilmore as the orderly, which I thought was very cool to see.
Great crowd-pleasing opener.
For sure, I'm glad they were able to get him in for that. And I was like, oh shit, I remember that guy from from Happy Gilmore. It's that one guy who never had anything else besides that character in Happy Gilmore. Glad
now your back's gonna hurt.
Yeah,
you just pulled landscape duty.
Yeah. Happy Gilmore is honestly my favorite Adam Sandler movie.
It's so good.
Mine's
Billy Madison. It's maybe my favorite comedy ever.
It is very funny. I still quote it every now and again.
It's hyper quotable.
Exactly. And the last little fact I have here, in the scene with Shaq, who is one of Adam Sandler's one true friends in this movie, who's a radio operator, he plays the song Werewolves of London by Warren Zevon. Sandler previously sang this song in an album that was a tribute to Zevon after his death.
Yeah, I remember when I found that and I was like, that's strange because there's no bit to it. There's no joke. This is the Zevon tribute album that has Adam Sandler on it for some reason.
Yeah.
Not a bad vocal performance, though. He's got a nice voice. But a strange person to cover a song.
Exactly. And, talk about Adam Sandler and Adam Sandler movies that had a poor critical reception. And also strange Adam Sandler song bits on albums. I think I will put at the very end of this episode the Chino Moreno, Incubus, Adam Sandler on acoustic guitar rendition of Drive.
Great super group.
Yeah.
You can imagine the meeting where Chino was just like, I need the opportunity to work with Adam Sandler. I'm sure that Chino approached Sandler and asked him to guest appear on it and not vice versa. He was just like, hey, I got to get this feature.
Exactly. And I would imagine Chino was drunk. Brandon Boyd from Incubus was on mushrooms. And Adam Sandler is doing the little Nicky voice and like, listen, guys, we can make this happen. And
the best voice out of the three of them.
Yeah. The most noted vocal talent out of all of them, Adam Sandler, for sure. Also the most horny, I would say, out of all of them, too. All right.
Well, it's an incredibly horny song and film.
Exactly. Very much so. Very, very much so. So without further ado, let's get to the synopsis of this classic film. As I mentioned earlier, the movie begins with Ben Stiller reprising his role as Hal from Happy Gilmore, checking in on a patient in an insane asylum. And he's just being his Hal self from Happy Gilmore. And he checks the bed. And what was the thing on the bed? Was it like gummy worms or something? I gotta remember.
Oh yeah, it was like molded into the shape of a person.
Yeah, exactly. And he lifts the sheet up. He's like, "Oh, he escaped!" And then the opening credits, which that's the thing. I like movies that just get to the credits, or I should say, like the opening, opening title right away.
And that's a good point because this movie, I didn't realize until I rewatched it for this, and you had said this to me, off mic, it crams a lot of stuff in there. It's actually a little bit convoluted.
Yeah, exactly.
In 90 minutes.
So, and that's why I said off recording earlier too, that I mostly took these notes off of Wikipedia because there's just honestly so much stuff and so many scenes that condensing all of it into something that wouldn't be 3 hours long would be a little tedious. So,
and it's mostly just scenes that are long set pieces, not really even plot points.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I didn't want to highlight that opening scene because it was rather short and it was pretty funny. So next little note I have here, Adam Sandler plays Hubie Dubois, I believe W.E.B. Dubois' grandson. I don't know exactly where the
looks
line.
just like him.
Yeah, looks just like him exactly. Noted civil rights icon and communist, party member W.E.B. Dubois had a child and a grandchild, and one of them was Hubie Dubois. Adam Sandler plays him as I would argue, mentally challenged man with a arguably offensive accent, which Adam Sandler loves to do in his movies.
So I've gotten into arguments with people about this because I don't read any of these characters as mentally disabled. A few months ago got into an argument with someone at work because they were saying that the Waterboy character is supposed to be handicapped, and I don't read it. I always think of them as just like man children with speech impediments.
Fair enough.
I like how it's him. Adam Sandler is kind of like a jazz musician, like John Coltrane, or someone who returns to themes and refines them over the years. So he's refined this voice, and he's refined this mama's boy character who's obsessed with hydration.
No, absolutely, and just like John Coltrane, as a legendary jazz musician, and as the old jazz saying goes, when it comes to characters with lisps, it's often about the syllables that aren't said.
Nice. That's good.
But Hubie works at a local deli where many people pick on him, including preteen children and Ray Liotta reprising his role from Observe and Report, I believe. This is now the second movie you've recommended in a row with Ray Liotta.
Yeah, you've caught on to me. That's my secret through line is that every movie I recommend will have a Liotta supporting role.
And I thought it was very funny because Ray Liotta, of course, legendary actor, who plays a man who we later learn is actually less intelligent than Hubie, and is jealous of Hubie as well. And I do believe as well, I'm looking at his Wikipedia article. Okay, so this was not his last movie before he passed away, but it's one of his last movies before Ray Liotta passed away.
Well, it would have been a good final send-off if it had been.
No, for sure, absolutely.
Unfortunately, he did make more movies after this and couldn't cap his career with Hubie Halloween.
Exactly. Oh, Jesus. Hubie is the butt of many practical jokes. While his antics have annoyed Police Sergeant Steve Downey and Blake and Father Dave, a priest played by Michael Chiklis, who I thought was very interesting. Of course, Michael Chiklis probably most well known for being the Thing in Fantastic Four. And then as well, he was in some other fucking show, like post 9/11, like
Agents of the Shield, that Marvel thing.
Yeah, yes, I think he was also on The Shield, if I'm not mistaken. I believe that was the show. In fact,
the cop that was just the right amount of racist.
Exactly. Yes, he was on The Shield as well, and that was, like I said, in the post 9/11, let's jack off the cops and troops era that we're still currently in, but definitely got started right after 9/11.
But that was a bad time with The Shield, and even more so with 24. Like, wow.
Yeah, who did 24 has not aged well, I'll just say that for sure. Hubie spends his time during Halloween monitoring the city as the official Halloween helper. And basically he's kind of the city hall monitor, and everyone fucking throws shit at him and knocks him around and insults
it's so
him.
Vicious. I feel so bad.
It is honestly a little hard to watch at points because, like I said, even though you disagree, and I think there is certainly some point to be made of it, I'm sure the town people probably literally do think he's mentally challenged, so they're literally just bullying a possibly mentally challenged man.
Oh yeah, no, they for sure think that because it's the same thing as like in Waterboy. I think actually there's several hard R words in Waterboy that don't crop up here.
No, that is very true. And also I will say I did see some reviews online, that did note that it seems that the whole town is picking on him for no reason. Although I will say, as a little bit of a clapback to that, I think this movie's a lot more self-aware than people give it credit for. I think it's meant to be like an extreme exaggeration that would happen in other Adam Sandler movies that is like not self-aware enough to where you could tell that like he's trying to poke fun at it. But in this movie, I think he's very clearly trying to poke fun at that.
Oh yeah, it's so heightened in this. And this is actually, I'm pretty sure, like this is the zaniest Sandler movie in a long time.
For sure.
Maybe the zaniest since Little Nicky. Maybe I'd have to think about that.
I would say, at least for the Sandler movies I've seen, I would say that sounds about right. At least definitely the zaniest Sandler movie I've seen since Little Nicky, at least the chronology of Sandler films.
Because post Little Nicky, he sort of got less ambitious and less weird with his comedy. And in most of those movies, anger management or whatever, he's sort of playing like a type of straight man. This is, I think, the actual, like, the broadest comedy, that he's done in a while, which is saying something.
Yeah, no, for sure. Absolutely. And a little scene I wanted to highlight because I did mention it to you yesterday, but the scene with the pig farmer and Officer Downey as well as his partner, the male pig farmer is played by the actor Lavelle Crawford, who played the character Huel in Breaking Bad.
It's everywhere. I can't escape it.
You can't escape Breaking Bad. You literally can't escape it.
You can't escape! You can't escape!
And I think it's funny that I, in two movies, the two movies that you picked, have both had intense and obvious Breaking Bad analogies to it.
They both take place in the extended BBU.
Exactly. And I believe after the events of Breaking Bad, because Breaking Bad ended chronology in 2009. So it makes sense that in 11 years, Huel lost a lot of weight, moved to Salem, and became a pig farmer. That would make a lot of sense.
Happy ending for him.
Yeah. And I will say as well, so when I see Huel in a movie, you know what that makes me, Brian? You know how happy that makes me?
How?
It makes me
reasonably
happy. And if Huel wasn't in this movie, would that also make me happy?
I'm gonna say no. Well, there you have it.
Next scene here, Hubie reconnects with his childhood friend and crush, Violet.
Pretty good chemistry.
Yes.
With them. Sandler is, kind of mixed bag with his chemistry with his female co-stars. Good chemistry here. Great chemistry with Drew Barrymore. No chemistry with Jen Aniston. But this is somewhere between.
Yes, I will agree. And also, they've known each other since they were children. Of course, like I said, childhood friend and crush earlier. And seemingly the only person besides his mom, the radio operator, and his mom, that's about it. Everybody else hates him. At least like 3 or 4 fucking people.
Just despise him, just abuse him constantly.
Just like he is the town whipping boy, like no pun intended. Like it's just like
there is the priest in a later scene who screams, "He's a human being," which is at least the vaguest defense of someone you can give.
To be fair, though, he was pretty mad at Hubie in the cemetery, though, when Ray Liotta's dad died.
Well, yeah.
He was being a dick there.
Oh, yeah.
Michael Chiklis was being a dick. More like Michael Dickless in that scene.
He's really stretching his acting muscles there.
Yeah, for sure. Really stretching out that Chiklis role. But anyway. Another funny little set piece here is Hubie goes to the local elementary school as the Halloween monitor, and it goes very, very poorly for him.
This is probably, to me, the funniest scene in the movie.
I agree. This is a very good scene. In fact, I know you kind of disparaged this movie earlier for good reason, but it reminded me a lot of the cafeteria scene in Joe Dirt.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, very much so.
So, but yeah, Brian, if you don't mind explaining why this is a good scene, I'm ready to hear it.
So I think that it's the best moment for, like, it's cringe comedy, and it borders right on the ridicule that Hubie gets he's talking about Halloween safety to kids who are a little too old to hear about Halloween safety. and he himself is terrified of everything. I just think it's kind of got the most back and forth to it. It's one of the most heightened scenes of the movie. It's also one of the simplest because a lot of scenes, there's a lot of plot points and a lot of moving parts. This almost just feels like it could just be a standalone like sketch, like it could have been an old SNL sketch or something.
Very much so, yes. Very much so. I did like this scene quite a bit.
I think this is what I'm thinking of, where Hubie goes up and the kids are jeering him, and it's the principal, not the priest, that goes, "He's a human being."
Oh yes, I believe so. Because that was
one of my favorite bits of the movie.
The priest didn't really strike me as somebody who might say that.
No.
And there's a choice scene later that shows the priest is not particularly very nice to Hubie either, as 99% of the town residents are not. The next day is the titular Halloween. Hubie is working once again as the Halloween monitor and investigates Walter, who I did fail to mention Walter earlier, but Walter is played by Steve Buscemi, who is a strange man who, spoilers, but he thinks he's a werewolf. And he boards up his house. Just very interesting man. I thought it was really cool. Once again, they brought Steve Buscemi back because he's also a very frequent Adam Sandler collaborator.
Yeah, and I wonder how that happened because, did they just become friends at some point? Because most of these guys are kind of like comic actors who ended up not doing so hot after the 90s. But Buscemi is like a serious actor who just sort of found his way into this ecosystem.
Yeah, well, the way I see it is, Steve Buscemi is, of course, as you mentioned, a serious, like critically acclaimed actor who has been in a lot of very high budget and high grossing films. But I also do think that he's a guy who just seemingly likes to just chill out.
Yeah.
He's a guy who's also been in a lot of comedies. Of course, he was in Community.
He's got a funny face and a funny voice.
Exactly. Next day is Halloween. Hubie is working as the Halloween monitor again and investigates his neighbor Walter, played by Steve Buscemi's home, after reports of strange noises. Having reported this to the police, he is, quote-unquote, recruited by Officer Downey, as I failed to mention earlier, played by Kevin James, with a interesting ensemble outfit. Looks like a 80s rocker with mullet and everything.
It makes me wonder, do you think Kevin James had aspirations to be like a cop at one point? Because
he plays cops in a lot of movies.
Well, and his favorite musician is Eddie Money, who's famously the cop songwriter.
I think we should look into that. I think we should look into that. There might
he looks like a guy that would want to be a cop.
Yes, for sure. But he's recruited by Downey as a AUU, auxiliary undercover unit. Hubie believes this assignment is genuine, but it is really just something Steve tells Hubie in hopes it will deter Hubie from bothering him. And in fact, he says like, "Oh, you will be our undercover agent. You will take these, you will take the tips and you'll write them down in your notebook, and then you'll drop it in this secure garbage bin that is monitored 24/7." And of course, he's just saying, "Write all this on paper and we'll throw it away," which I thought was a very funny way of saying it. And also, Officer Downey is Violet's husband as well. So there's that conflict as well.
Power couple.
Yeah, exactly. And Adam Sandler, spoiler alerts, is gonna cook Kevin James.
I also like how Sandler or Hubie completely trusts Downey in this, even though Downey's constantly, like everyone else, teasing and abusing him. But Hubie seems to think that they're like best friends, maybe?
Yeah, it is pretty bizarre. Oh, shit. So Hubie goes to a Halloween party to monitor the activities. However, it soon turns sour. Hubie is tricked into going into a corn maze following reports about a lost child. Hubie finds Mike and sees him getting pulled into the maze and then disappearing. I believe my description... oh, yes, never mind. Yes, gets pulled into a corn maze. And we see our first bully get disappeared by an unknown figure who we believe is the escaped convict from earlier. That's who we think it is. And for all intents and purposes, it is them, right? We never get any confirmation it was anybody else.
It's set up like a mystery, but literally no mystery.
Exactly. Hubie moves his attention to monitoring a drive-in cinema. Hubie's old classmates Lester and Mary Hennessy, played by Tim Meadows and Maya Rudolph, respectively, other, once again, SNL cast alumni, scare Hubie, and that's another thing I failed to mention earlier, that Hubie, one of his main gimmicks is that he's terrified of everything. He's a big scaredy cat.
And loves Halloween somehow. Feels like a kinship with it because he's so scared, I guess.
I mean, I think there's something to that. I think that's like, it's kind of adorable, actually.
Yeah, it's nice. No, the Rudolph and Tim Meadows scene is, that's one of my favorite bits in the movie. Just to have this acrimonious couple that is so sick of each other who can bond by tormenting the village.
Yeah. I mean, there's like millions of couples like that everywhere in America. Let's be honest here.
That is depressing.
I feel like that's probably the majority of like Trump supporters, to be honest, although I could be wrong about that.
Majority of married people.
That is also very true. After false reports of suspicious activity in one of the cars at the drive-in, who turn out to be trick-or-treaters driven by Mr. Hennessy to throw eggs at Hubie, he flees into the woods and finds Walter. Walter thinks he's turning into a werewolf and chases Hubie to a haunted house and a fun fair. Now, we never get any actual confirmation that Walter is a werewolf, but he does have very hairy arms at one point. That's all the confirmation we really get. He could be a werewolf, but we never know. Mm-hmm. We never know. I like how that's kind of left up to interpretation by the audience.
Yeah, it's a real Rashomon situation.
Yeah. That's a good comparison. I would definitely describe Adam Sandler as very much of a 50s Japanese actor, very much so, for sure.
Oh, yeah, he's a student.
Yeah. Mr. and Mrs. Hennessy are kidnapped, and Sergeant Downey is alerted. At the haunted house, Hubie sees a Siberian husky, thinking it is Walter in his final form. The husky then runs into the haunted house, and Hubie chases it inside. It is eventually shown that the husky is Miss Taylor, who is a teacher at the school that Adam Sandler had his little assembly at that went very poorly. Pet dog Buster. Yeah,
it's kind of just like, it's sort of a red herring, but it's also like, that's clearly not a werewolf. There's, I don't know, some good bits I think of Hubie just like trying to like have a conversation with this dog and just yelling at it in his absurd voice.
Yeah.
And a good amount of scatological humor, which I don't usually like, but it's fine here.
No, for sure. Absolutely. And Ray Liotta's character, who is, once again, one of Hubie's many tormentors, is hitting on this teacher, who I believe in real life is played by like a 22-year-old, and he's like 70,000 years old.
He looks like it, yeah.
He looks like it, too, in this movie. And there's actually a really funny moment where she's like, "Are you hitting on me?" He's like, "No, we're just having a conversation," which is just a total like fucking creep perv move.
Expert move.
Fucking just every creepy guy who's hit on like somebody who's barely of age says that. Like it's fucking hilarious. Like, damn, Adam Sandler, you really hit the nail on the fucking head. Like, holy shit.
Universal truths.
Yeah. But Ray Liotta's character goes in to scare Hubie, but is once again kidnapped by this masked assailant. Sergeant Downey arrives and suggests to Mayor Benson, who was the mayor we mentioned earlier that is wearing the jacket from Jaws, or at least very similar to it, that they should cancel Halloween. Hubie thinks it is Walter, but then Blake calls Downey stating that Walter is at the police station with Richie. I believe Blake, sorry, I think I mentioned his name earlier, is played by Kenan Thompson, once again, another SNL cast member.
And this is, I think, his only Sandler Happy Madison role.
I believe so, yeah. You know, you got to remember, he's so busy with SNL. He's just so busy with it, being the best member of SNL.
Being the cast member that has been on for the longest time. Is he still on?
He is still on SNL, yes, to this day.
Yeah.
Wild shit, I know, right?
When is he going to pivot to starring in motion pictures? Any day now.
Any day. Well, to be fair, he was in the classic Good Burger.
A great film. Great film.
Definitely gave Abe Vigoda his due. I'm glad they did in that movie.
Best Abe Vigoda movie?
I would argue, yes.
Surely what he wanted to be known for, remembered for.
Yes, exactly. But then Blake calls Downey stating that Walter's at the police station with Richie, who was the escaped convict from earlier, played by Rob Schneider, who had turned themselves in. They also reveal that Walter's real name is Nick Hudson. Richie had escaped, bringing Walter back to the mental institution, which they refer to as the Werewolf Treatment Center. So the whole bit is that they were cellmates together at the insane asylum, and Richie escaped the insane asylum to bring Walter back because they're just such good friends.
It's a cute bit. It's fun seeing them and knowing that they're real friends. You know, that actors playing them. It's cute.
Yeah, it was very funny, including the scene where Richie is pissing, and he's like, "Oh, you're always known for pissing." He's like, "I'm pissing right now."
Call back to the classic Sandler sketch from the What the Hell Happened to Me album, The Longest Pee.
Yes, and also another Adam Sandler motif is pissing in movies. He loves pissing in movies.
Both metaphorically and literally.
Exactly, very much so. Downey, Benson, and Dave agree that Hubie is the kidnapper, thinking he is getting revenge on his bullies. He runs away and goes to the radio station, as I mentioned earlier. And also, before we move on, I do think it would make sense that they would blame Hubie because he's a guy who's just very involved in trying to find this, and just everywhere he goes, somebody disappears.
And he's just, that's a strange guy.
Exactly. It reminds me of the very much R-rated film Pieces, where the janitor in that movie is very much brought up as the red herring in that movie as the killer of that film. And it's just because he's a weird guy who ended up playing Bluto in the Popeye live action movie.
Oh, is that him?
Yes. Oh, that's right. You have seen Pieces. Great film, by the way.
With a great payoff.
Very much. The ending of Pieces is like a top 10 slasher movie ending for fucking sure. It is incredible. If you like Hubie Halloween, definitely watch Pieces.
Peas in a pod.
Exactly. Oh, shit. At the radio station, DJ Aurora, played by Shaq, who has a very interesting and very sultry voice. And Shaq's partner, played by Jack Black. Oh, that's a slip of the tongue there. But played by Jack Black in a wig. I didn't recognize them at first, actually, believe it or not.
Yeah, it took me a while, which, I've seen him so much, you'd think he'd jump right out, but he was just embodying that character so much.
Well, I'm used to, like, modern middle-aged Jack Black having a beard, so the fact I didn't see him there. Yeah. Which, to be fair, in this movie, definitely not a beard, because they're both men in this relationship that they have. But no that's not good there. But DJ Aurora tells Hubie that someone calls a lot more than him, always requesting a song for Hubie. They all think it's Sergeant Downey's ex-wife, Violet Valentine. I know.
You would think that Hubie would know about this, given what an avid listener he is.
Exactly, very much so. Well, to be fair, he's, I think, having issues with being able to hang up the phone, so he might miss certain things there. So that was a very funny bit, I thought. In that. But Violet and Hubie profess their love for each other in a very sweet scene that is honestly like a much more self-aware scene in like an Adam Sandler movie where like the woman who's like 5 points ahead of him, like a solid 10 out of 10. It's like,
just like I've always loved you.
Exactly. I've always loved you. But it's played for laughs and is very self-aware, so I appreciate that.
As opposed to like, I'm trying to think of a good example here. Like Anger Management, where there's the worst reconciliation scene I've ever seen.
Yeah. Oh God, just beautiful stuff. But yes, in this scene, I'm sorry, Brian, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think Sandler, I really do think he is very funny, but wow, he is not good at rom-com stuff.
No, which is why I'm glad that this was like a very self-aware thing, because I think he's good at making it like self-aware and poking fun at himself, and I think this is a very good scene for that.
Yeah.
But yes, so Sergeant Downey gives Hubie a burner phone to try to figure out who the kidnapper is. The burner phone that was placed when called is revealed to be in Hubie's house, and he races there. So the call is coming from inside the house.
Who is it? Who could it be?
And we find out it is Hubie's mother.
Dun, dun.
And also, we failed to mention Hubie's mother, but really the only bit in this movie that she has is every time she's on screen, she has a different shirt that references sex and penises.
Pretty good bit.
It's a pretty good bit. In fact, one of the funnier scenes early on when you were talking about the cafeteria is, what's the cafeteria? The boner donor. He's like, I've had many boners in my life.
Yeah, the boner donor bit's good.
Yeah, because in the beginning of the scene when we see Hubie's mom, she's wearing a shirt that says boner donor on it, and she believes that boner is just another word for a goofy mistake or an accident.
I need to get that shirt.
I agree. I would get one that says boner garage on it.
We can match.
Exactly. But yes, it is revealed that Hubie's mother kidnapped Pete, Mike, and the Hennessy's as revenge for tormenting Hubie and plans to burn them alive at the stake. Which makes sense considering it is Salem, although I don't believe they actually killed any of the witches in Salem that way. One of the witches in Salem, interestingly enough, was killed by pressing, if you know what pressing is, Brian. Was like a 90-year-old man who was pressed to death with rocks on his chest.
Oh, I'd rather be burned.
His name was Giles Corey, a very interesting character in real life. So yeah, he was like 90 when he was pressed to death.
Oh my God.
Very messy indeed.
Well, better safe than sorry, you know?
Exactly. He rescues them just as his mom is throwing the lit match, and he puts it out with his trusty thermos full of soup. Which that's another bit. I like his thermos. It's honestly like a cute little gadget. I wish I had that thermos.
And it's a nice that's been a thing for a long time. Him having these characters that just are really into hydration or something. The thermos is kind of related to that, but that goes all the way back even to a Canteen Boy in like 1991 or whatever.
Yeah, I feel like Hydro Homies, the subreddit, should have Adam Sandler as their mascot because he is just in movies with hydration in them.
Yeah, I mean, what other major film stars giving representation to that community?
Very much so, for sure. But yes, once again, he rescues them just as the police, the news media, Nick and Richie arrive, but they are still ungrateful. His mother then scolds Pete, Mike, and the Hennessy's for all the things they did to Hubie, and they try to make amends, but it's like, oh, Hubie, I made fun of you because I was just so jealous about how cool and smart you were, including Ray Liotta. But they still insult him, which is not cool, because they did save his life.
Mm-hmm.
But Hubie's mother suddenly disappears upon using the Frankenstein trick, which is another little funny bit, is that every time someone in this movie's cornered, including Hubie and his mom, they yell Frankenstein. Everyone looks the other way and then they run away. It's very adorable.
And it's referred to as a classic bit that people do all the time.
Yeah, it's just like,
oh, you Frankenstein me.
Yeah. And in the final scene, we fast forward to 1 year later. Hubie is married to Violet, and I assume at this point he's lost his virginity because it is a plot point in this movie that he is still a virgin. In this movie, I believe he was a Volcel, though. He didn't strike me as an incel, but I could.
No, he seems like he's just waiting for true love.
Yes, definitely does not hate women, which is good. But he's married to Violet. Is the new mayor of Salem, and his new foster kids are going trick-or-treating dressed like people he knows, including one of them played by Officer Downey, including the mullet outfit and everything.
That would be a pretty cute costume theme for like kids that lived in a small town.
Oh, for sure, absolutely. Having earned respect from the locals, Hubie goes into town on his bicycle And instead of getting pelted with everything and knocked down and harassed, he's loved and celebrated. Officer Downey escorts him and prepares for the Halloween festivities in a much better year, I would hope. And that's the end of the movie, except for, like I said, 15 minutes of credits and gags.
It's very simple and feel good, and I don't know. Not much to say. Happy ending.
For sure. And I kind of mentioned it earlier in the review, but my final thoughts, I liked it. It was actually better than I would have thought it was, especially considering that I have not watched an Adam Sandler comedy in a very long time. And
you haven't kept up with his growth.
I've not caught up with the Adam Sandler repertoire. I have not seen Don't Mess with the Zohan or Jack and Jill or The Ridiculous Six. I have not seen any of those.
I've seen all of those.
I would probably watch all of them except for The Ridiculous Six.
Ridiculous Six is kind of rough.
It looked pretty fucking bad, I'll be honest. But either way, I did like this movie quite a bit. I thought it was actually pretty funny. I laughed quite a few times. And as I've mentioned several times, I did like that it did seem self-aware.
It feels very much like a throwback to like 90s Sandler stuff, the comedy albums and SNL, more than anything he's done in a long time.
Exactly. So yeah, very much liked this movie. I would recommend it. And as always, with every movie that Brian ever recommends, watch it for the Breaking Bad cameo.
Yeah, that's why I pick him.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like, it was crazy. What was it, like almost 10 years ago now that Sandler moved over to his Netflix exclusive thing? And I remember at the time that was really, he got a lot of jeers for that. And a lot of critics and kind of cynics would say, he's finally calling in the towel. He's been getting lazier and lazier. And now he's going to move to Netflix and just churn things out and not have to worry about box offices. But what seems to have happened for whatever reason is Ridiculous Six notwithstanding, because that was a bad movie, like almost unwatchable. He's gotten a lot more, I don't know if experimental is the right word, but I don't know, a lot more diverse with Netflix. He, of course, did 100% Fresh. He did, Hubie Halloween, which is a type of movie he hadn't done in, I think, over 20 years or about 20 years at that point.
Yeah.
He now has his own, there's now a branch of Happy Madison that makes its own dramas, which are not quite dramas on the level of, say, Punch Drunk Love or, Uncut Gems, but are kind of more solemn and understated movies like Hustle and I don't fucking know. Hustle is the one I just saw most recently. So I think that, I don't know, I actually think the last few years have been really good for Sandler reevaluation, not just because of Uncut Gems, but because he is starting to kind of move outside of his comfort zone in a lot of ways. I mean, he's obviously still making, the vacation movies too.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. So, but yes, without further ado, let's get into the very last section of this episode. I know Brian's favorite. We're going to get into the IMDb reviews.
I love reviews of Adam Sandler.
Exactly. And you might be wondering, wait, IMDb reviews? Aren't they Amazon reviews? Well, once again, this movie was only released through Netflix, so there are no Amazon reviews. But I was able to find some IMDb reviews. IMDb noted for not being nearly as funny as Amazon's review section, but just as crazy. So this should be very interesting. First review I have here, and this was the featured review on the front page of the IMDb section the IMDb entry for this movie, so I decided to put it first. This review is from Jim Kenny Everett, bunch of numbers. So as the old adage goes on Twitter, my name, bunch of numbers, I have an incredibly stupid opinion. He gave it a 4 out of 10 stars. And his review...
Boo.
Yeah, fucking boo!
Wrong answer. That's what the kids call epic fail.
The header says, awful voice, slow movie.
Slow movie.
Yeah, I wonder what kind of slow movie he's talking about.
It's actually frantic.
It is actually. And also, once again, without credits, 90 minutes. So it doesn't really overstay its welcome. But that's neither here nor there. But yes, Mr. Jim Kenny Everett, bunch of numbers, says, I like Adam Sandler most of the time and wanted to like this film. It's great that he brought all of his friends in for this movie. There are recognizable faces throughout this film, but I just found it slow. And within 30 minutes, I was looking at the clock and starting to skip bits with Adam doing the same push bike crash a few times in the first half hour. It had its moments, but hitting you over the head repeatedly with the morality story didn't help. You can look and sound stupid, but be the smartest in the town and get the girl. The entire town bullied and berated him. And turns out they all have their own deficiencies and miserable lives when it comes down to it. Yay for Hubie! Overall, I have seen far better from Adam Sandler and worse too.
What a strange take to be like, normally I really like and enjoy Adam Sandler, but boy, those voices. Oh, I love everything about him except when he does the voices.
That's like 95% of his movie.
What is this a guy that does he mean that he doesn't say Billy Madison or Waterboy so much, but he really likes just go with it? He's like, oh,
yeah, he loves grown-ups, but hates Hubie Halloween. It's
funny people.
Yeah, it's just weird. But that was the featured review. So I thought I'd put that one first. The next review is from Fila_Shibby. They gave it a 7 out of 10 stars. And they say, a fun way to kickstart the Halloween season before diving into the darker and scarier movies.
I wrote this. This is me.
Yeah, I was honestly thinking that. And I read this. And I'm like, oh, this sounds like Brian wrote this. So in their review, they say, everybody watches Sandler films to reduce cortisol, which I don't really know if that's true.
I'll have to do some research on that.
Yeah, Uncut Gems is one of the most anxiety-inducing films I've seen in many years, so I do not agree with that. But either way, in this one is a worthy entry for the Halloween season, which can be enjoyed by the entire family. I would say it's a PG-13, but it's barely a PG-13.
Yeah, it definitely feels like a family movie, right?
Yes.
Probably the optimal way to watch this is right at Halloween with all your decorations up and all the different age ranges of your family huddled around, all being able to find something. I don't know. I like this movie too much.
If this movie was made in the early 80s, it would for sure be a PG. This is barely a PG-13. It has everything. Costume parties, carving pumpkins into jack-o'-lanterns, lighting bonfires, apple bobbing, playing pranks, visiting haunted attractions, telling scary stories, kids on bicycles. That's a weird one to note, but okay. Lots of different masks, cornfield maze, a werewolf, a psycho on the run, as well as fellas enjoying horror films at the drive-in and kids at home. That was all one sentence, by the way.
That classic Halloween tradition of kids on bicycles.
Exactly.
Very unique to the month of October.
And this is a funny sentence. I'm gonna try to say this without laughing. It even has some fun cameos in a fat mom with lovely t-shirts. The film moves at a steady pace and has lots of comedy in an enjoyable twist. So that was their review, I should say. I don't think the movie really had much of a twist, though. I kind of saw a lot of this coming from a mile away.
You didn't feel shaken to your core by the revelations?
I did not, including the escaped convict or escaped mental patient having barely any impact on the story and being a giant red herring. I predicted that one from a mile away. I'll just say that. But to be fair, a twist for a PG-13 movie made for
4-year-olds.
Exactly.
And me.
Exactly, yes. But in general, once again, very enjoyable film. Just because a movie is predictable doesn't mean it's bad. That does not mean it's bad. I feel like that's a big trope among a lot of film nerds. It's predictable. Well, sometimes predictable is okay.
Yeah, I
mean that's okay sometimes.
This movie is very raw. It's very much just what marks it's going to hit. It hits them all right down the list.
Exactly. It is a movie that in everything that it's trying to attempt, it hits the ball just straight away into sometimes a home run, but not always. But it does not have any foul balls. I'll just say
And, I mean, you know what you're in for. I think if you hear about this movie, you know if you're going to want to watch it or not.
Exactly. Also, you're not watching a Park Chan-wook movie. Like, there's not a lot of twists and turns you can't see coming. So, fun.
And also, Vila, if you think that's a guy or a gal? Because I don't meet many Sandler connoisseurs. And pretty insightful and well written review.
Philia Shibby. I'm not entirely sure. I will say they use the word N a lot. Just like the letter N when they think they mean like Anne or whatever. So I'm assuming this is probably somebody who's underage. But I could be wrong about that. Who knows? Who knows? I have no idea. But either way, last review is from the legendary IMDb individual who it goes by the username Furnace Funeral.
My God.
I think they'd run a funeral home, but I'm not entirely sure. They run a cremation facility. I think
that is definitely a choice to go with that username.
Exactly. I believe Furnace Funeral was also the name of a very bad 90s death metal band.
My God.
They gave this movie a 10 out of 10.
Yes.
And the header of their review is, "Ow, my soup." And their review entails, "Laugh out loud, Adam Sandler wholesomeness. So happy I watched it, but even happier it was made in the first place. My new favorite Halloween film, aside from Charlie Brown, of course. Actually, Trick or Treat is the best Halloween movie, the anthology film that I will say is very good.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
Underrated classic that I do believe did very poorly at the box office at the time, but has very much had a critical and commercial reappraisal to a certain extent."
Oh yeah, I think it's fair to say by this point that it's really entered into like the Halloween like iconic lexicon, like more than any other sort of relatively modern film.
Yes, and I do believe actually they meant the movie Trick or Treat, the movie with Gene Simmons and Ozzy Osbourne in it.
That movie kicks ass too.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I'm just kidding. Kerr. I don't think they mentioned that one. No, I don't think they were referencing that one, but they're definitely.
That movie is fucking cool.
No, for sure, absolutely. But I do believe they are referencing the Michael Dougherty film Trick or Treat.
Definitely.
Also, once again, this is a movie I actually was able to see in theaters, but the legendary Krampus, another great movie of his.
I wanted to see that in theaters.
It's a great movie. I would definitely recommend it.
Strong Gremlins vibes with it.
Absolutely.
And who knows what's funny better than Furnace Funeral?
Exactly. Very much so. But yes, they say Trick or Treat is the best Halloween movie, but that is more of a horror movie. This is for This is for the whole family. And I decided to keep it short, 3 reviews, because there were a lot of reviews complaining about basically the same things, and I didn't want to
voice jokes.
Yeah, voice jokes. A lot of people didn't necessarily get the bit that the movie's very self-aware, so they're like, why is everyone mean to Hubie? And it's like, that's the joke. Like, that's the fucking joke.
Do they think it's funny to be mean to this guy?
Oh my God, that's a thing I really get mad about in a lot of like just sort of like fan communities in general. Like, I've been very involved in the Breaking Bad fan community recently, not posting, just reading. I want that to be clear.
Thank you.
And every time I see people post about something on that subreddit, I'm like, you're not supposed to like that character. Stop saying you hate this character. Nobody fucking cares.
Just imagining the guy that sees this movie and is like, personally, I did not think Hubie Halloween was funny. I did not approve of how Ray Liotta treats him.
Just like, God damn, man. Just like, like fans who can't separate their feelings from art really fucking annoy the shit out of me. Like, save that shit for fucking Marvel. Don't do that shit for good things.
People who need to have parasocial relationships with fictional characters. Yeah, I hate that shit.
So fucking annoying. And that's honestly why, except for Doctor Strange, I have not watched a single MCU movie. I refuse to. Like, they just bother the fuck out of me for that reason.
They're all, they're fine as whatever. I just hate how they're the only thing that like major studios will put any money behind now. So they suffocated any other divisions of, studios making other types of movies.
Although, talk about things that studios will put money into, though. I do like that there's been a lot of, to be fair, not big budgets, but a couple $1 million budgets into some very good horror movies recently.
Oh yeah.
Speaking of spooky things, and also I think I mentioned it to you, and we're not going to keep this in the episode, obviously, because it's very, very much of a digression, or we might, who knows? But I think I mentioned it to you last night, but Barbarian was directed by Zach from Whitest Kids You Know.
Oh,
wild shit!
I must have missed that message.
Never
guessed. Awesome.
Yeah, fucking. Who would have thought that Zach from The Whitest Kids You Know directed a pretty critically acclaimed horror movie in 2022? Bizarre.
I really enjoyed seeing that in theaters. That was a good theater experience where you could feel all the kind of communal tension ratcheting up throughout. Between, the X trilogy and Barbarian, I feel like I'm seeing like pretty extreme horror stuff get a level of like mainstream, visibility that I never would have expected for those types of movies.
No, and I know I have my criticisms of the sort of A24 quote unquote elevated horror genre in itself, but honestly, ever since A24 got big, I would say this has been the best like era for horror films in a long fucking time.
Oh yeah, no, A24 has been. I mean, obviously, goes without saying, but cranking out great stuff like the last year.
Also, to be fair, Blumhouse too. Blumhouse and A24 have really, I think, very much pioneered the modern horror renaissance the last couple of years, in my opinion. At least, especially from a critical perspective. Because what horror movie in like 2006 was as critically acclaimed as your average horror movie that came out like 3 days ago?
Yeah.
Like really, it's
probably some
shit.
Fucking garbage, some pretentious bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. And to be fair, A24, they definitely do miss, their idea of horror coming from unresolved trauma. You might want to divert away from that a little bit more, try to branch out a little bit more.
Men sucks. I hate that movie so much.
That was what I was referencing. That movie looks horrible.
Absolute nonsense, and written by a man who thinks he's saying something, and it's just so fucking stupid.
I heard that. Even the trailer bothered me. It looked very dumb.
Exact same thing as Mother, where the first half of it sets up a premise that seems pretty straightforward and like it's going to work, and then it just falls apart. It becomes thinks it's symbolism, and it's just nonsense.
Exactly.
I hate those fucking movies.
Very much so. But yeah, speaking of the spooky season, any last things to mention before we wrap up recording here, Bri? Also considering, I know this is going to be very outdated by the time the episode comes out, but your nickname on this episode will be Try Bri.
Okay, I'm down. I like it.
You are the Try Bri, and I am Tiberius Gracchus. No, we're not doing this. That'd be terrible. But yes, any last things to mention before we end this episode, good man?
Nah. I mean, I guess since we've got a backlog, this won't be present for October, but I want to continue doing at least tangentially kind of Halloweenish stuff throughout the month.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'd be down for that too. So yes, this shall be Taylor signing off.
And also Brian, me.
All right, excellent. Have a good night, everybody. See you later.
far away. I don't care where, just 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 far just far away. I don't care where, 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 just far. Well, that felt good.